Okay, so I'm mostly just leaving information for people to go and look at. Now, we're looking at the differences between um, terzepatide, which is mounjaro, and the difference between semaglutide, which is a combination of two GLP receptor inhibitors, agonists, that are found in Ozempic and Wegovy. So I'm giving you some of the information, but one of the biggest things, if you want to research all of this, you can. One of the biggest things to understand is that the semaglutide, the two GLP um, agonists, um, they were derived from Gila monster venom, which was started to be studied in 1984, but for completely different purposes. So when it came to studies of the brain, when they understood that this was really going to be something that we could put in with diabetic patients, they did not do their best work there. So it was a lot less studied. They were studying more of the amino acids and how it was going to diminish the receptors that said I'm hungry, I need to eat, but they did not look at long-term neurological effects. So there were some issues, and they're starting to have more issues come up now. Now it was like I said, Gila monster venom was discovered in 1984, but test for the Ozempic and stuff didn't, it wasn't really being tested and talked about until like 2019, 2018, 2019. Um, the Mounjaro has been studied far more in the brain because it is, unlike having the two GLP inhibitors and agonists and the way that they inhibit the brain, um, the terzepatide is basically a combination of amino acids which mimic but do not basically create a hormone injection itself. It mimics that in the brain, but it doesn't introduce or go in to directly augment the hormones present in someone's brain. So they did much more research on the neurological effects of the tirzepatide, and they found that it was actually a better option. It had better results, and it had a lot less side effects than the Ozempic, which again is a derivative of a Gila monster venom that was discovered in 1984 but was studied for completely different results. Now they found out that with the tirzepatide that it's also really great in people with polycystic ovarian syndrome issues, PCOS, because it does not overwhelm, it doesn't go into the body and like overwhelm the hormone panel in the brain. It doesn't go in and just rearrange. It goes in, mimics, but allows the brain to do feedback. It doesn't go in and like start rearranging furniture. It goes in and goes, hey, could we maybe put the couch by the window? But your brain can totally say no. And sometimes with the Ozempic and Wegovy, your brain doesn't get to say no. It just goes in and rearranges the furniture. That's the best way for me to describe that. So there's been a lot of stuff about this, but I think that's why you think it's been around and studied longer. It has been studied longer because it came from Gila monster venom that came from 1984, but it has not been studied neurologically longer. Actually, the tirzepatide, the mounjaro, was studied for neurological side effects far more because they were also looking at it as a Alzheimer dementia kind of component, because other people with diabetes often have early onset dementia and Alzheimer issues. So when they were looking at tirzepatide completely as um, a medication to go in and help people with diabetes or that were overweight, were having some of the issues, they immediately said, well, we have to take into effect the neurological issue because this is what we're also seeing in diabetic patients. So the neurological studies for the tirzepatide have been of greater depth and greater volume than of the Ozempic and Wegovy, just because of the derivatives of where they came from. So Ozempic Wegovy came from a hormone that has been synthesized out of Gila monster venom, and the tirzepatide is a combination of amino acids that mimic hormones in the brain. So basically, it's it's safer, and it allows your brain to hold more of its own structure. It does not get rerouted. It gets asked to feel these urges and respond to these things differently, but your brain can override that. As with Ozempic, what they find is that many times, because it is a direct hormone derivative of Gila monster venom and not a synthesized version, it has more impact neurologically on the people that take it. And so they're going back and now initiating more studies on the neurological side effects of Ozempic, because now they're saying that it lights up completely throughout the brain. If you go and look at the studies where they've placed it in people's bodies and done the studies to see what areas of the brain it focuses in, it travels completely all through the brain in places that they did not know it went, and wonder why would it go there, when the tirzepatide studies basically showed that it stayed where it was supposed to stay. It did not have the wide, encompassing, it didn't just like take over. It stayed in the receptor areas that it was supposed to stay. So it's just kind of, what are you more comfortable with as someone that's worked in the mental health field and looked at these studies and looked at the, when I used to supervise sex offenders, I was watching the brain and neurological studies of how sex offenders' brains responded to impulses and different medications and stimuli, because they were trying to regress the nature of the human body. So when I looked at these two drugs, I looked at it through the neurological studies, because to me that's the most important, because my brain is how I make my entire body function. So obviously, also tirzepatide is less harsh on the kidneys, liver, and heart. So it has a better overall testing report card. It's just for me, it was a better option. Not may not be for you, but I've put in all of these as you're more than welcome to go look at. And I just wanted to explain. Yes, it's been around longer, but it has not been neurologically studied in the depth that tirzepatide has been studied, and they're tricky. You have to really go and take these apart and follow each drug and each research study, and you have to have access to some libraries that most people don't have access to, and thankfully with my jobs and my career I do. But you have to really dig to understand what they're saying, because they want to sell you something at the end of the day, and they want to make you feel comfortable. But the biggest thing is that you take control of your life. You do your own education, you do your own research, and you feel comfortable with what you're taking. And because I'm a mental health clinician at heart, I'm taking something that is not a direct hormone from another being that could have repercussions that have not yet been identified. I'm taking something that has been synthesized and studied for many, many years, because they were going to directly use it for diabetes, and they were looking at, well, we really need to see if it's going to enhance or delay the Alzheimer and dementia issues that we're seeing in our patients. So I feel much more comfortable with my tirzepatide, my mounjaro, than the Ozempic Wegovy, and that is my reasoning for that. But you may have a different perception or perspective, and that's completely fine. That's just where I'm coming from. So I hope this clears up everything. I had a comment on a video. I just want someone to know where I'm coming from. I know that I act like a hillbilly and a stupid idiot, but I do have my master's in psychology, and I was a practitioner for a while, and I have worked with a lot of neurologically based study groups and had to monitor a lot of medication studies, especially when they were starting to try to push prescriptions onto younger and younger people that were in counseling. And with DSM says, no, we can't do certain things, but they were starting to override those. So I became very, very, very focused on neurological based studies, especially with new medications that were being pushed without proper neurological testing. And it's all about tracing it back to the origin and understanding the motivation of the physicians that created this. And Ozempic might have been a great ipsidaisy that they found from Gila monster venom, but tirzepatide was synthesized primarily to be kinder to the brains and the hormone panel of those already struggling with diabetes, to not cause a greater factor or possibility of having Alzheimer or dementia related issues. plus they made it softer and kinder to the liver, kidneys, heart, and everything else. So that's my basis, and I hope everyone does their homework if you have an option to take one of these drugs, and if you find yourself in the position to have to, like I did. I had to make the best possible decision for me, and this is how I made my decision.